Millions could be on the verge of foreclosure as loss after loss after loss after loss after loss keeps hitting the housing market.
A perfect storm ending in foreclosure.
I just feel like I'm tracking through the mud and swimming against the current.
And it's showing how bad it's really getting in the Canadian economy. Recently, we had shocking data from the CFIB that was released that showed just what a dire state the economy is in. You can see that business confidence fell to the lowest level on record, and actually it was lower than during the pandemic, which you have to admit was a hell of a time for Canada. I mean, that was when the economy was shut down, and you now have business confidence that is in the same place as that. So you're really seeing what is going on right now in the Canadian economy. And I say to people, you've got to prepare, because a lot of people are going to be losing their job over the next 12 months. Canada's economic crisis keeps going from bad to worse. We've seen citizens who cannot afford to feed themselves anymore, as you've got food banks that are running out of food. You basically got food banks having record new usage every single month. And on top of that, the government comes in with their tariffs, which is just making food prices more and more expensive. And not only that, you've got a massive credit and debt bubble that is imploding in Canada, and you've got the Bank of Canada that doesn't have a clue what to do anymore because inflation has finally started to pick up, and now the Bank of Canada may have to hold interest rates where they are because the data has just got so bad so quickly on inflation. But the real risk here is hidden in the shadows, as it always is, and that real risk is actually deflation, but the type of bad deflation that you don't want to see. The type of deflation that you see in a depression because nobody can afford to buy anything anymore, so businesses have to then reduce their prices, and because their margins aren't getting any bigger, in fact they're shrinking, it just leads to them laying off more and more workers. And Canada has seen investment flight over the past couple of years that have just been record breaking. And not only is investment taking flight, it's also people. The amount of people leaving the country has hit the highest level in over 50 years. And it's no wonder that that is really happening when you consider what is going on right now in the country, and you go and take a walk in any of the downtown cores in Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, Vancouver, you see homeless people everywhere struggling. And if you go to a local food bank in the morning, you will see the unbelievable desperation and poverty that is out there right now. And when your citizens can't afford to feed themselves, then that really is depressionary level stuff. And you've got more and more people that are speaking out on just how bad the job market is in Canada, because we know that layoffs have just been increasing and increasing and increasing over time. But what you're seeing is people who have been out of work have been out of work now for 6 months, 12 months, and they don't know what to do.
6 months in Canada, still no job. Let me be real with you. I have been trying so hard to find a job. Applying every day, reaching out to people, but nothing seems to be working.
You've seen a massive ramp up in immigration over the past couple of years, but with no jobs to actually give to those people coming into the country. So that has led to an absolute disaster where you've had inflation and you've had wage growth that has been stagnating if you take out the government wage growth that keeps the numbers looking artificially high. And then if you look at the amount of public sector employees as a percentage of total employees, you can see that in Canada it is way higher than both the UK and the United States. And this is a shocking statistic when you really think about how inefficient government really is and how inefficient government spending is. And all you've had is government want to get more involved in housing, and essentially that has been a total disaster as well. And lots of taxpayer funds are just being vaporized into that housing bubble. And now, just to add insult to injury, you've got more and more tariffs that seem to be released every single week on Canada. And this isn't really helping the situation. It's freezing businesses because they don't know what to do. And it's not going to be long before manufacturers start laying off workers, which is just going to add to the bad recessionary, depressionary environment that Canada is already in. And the over-reliance on the housing bubble is really starting to show right now, because all the investment capital that was heading into Canada over the past decade went into the housing bubble and didn't go into productive investments. And the problem is a lot of what governments did is they created roadblocks, red tapes, and regulations to basically push up the cost of housing, but really to just collect more revenues in order to extract revenues from the ever larger growing bubble. And now that bubble is imploding, and you've got governments that are questioning just how large the fees are that these local governments are charging, and just how that has helped push up the cost of housing as well. But what people fail to recognize about a housing bubble is you have to allow free market forces to prevail. Eventually, they're going to prevail anyway, and you have rubber hitting the road like we're having happen right now. But you have to think of it from a speculator or investor's point of view right now. What speculator or investor is going to invest in a housing market to rent out a property when you look at the fact that immigration numbers are actually falling right now, and immigration numbers on the last quarter were actually at the lowest level since 2020, which says something about how immigration has slowed, and you've got rents declining. That is not an environment that any speculator or investor wants to invest in, and that's without adding into the equation interest rates and the risk that investors want to take on as well. Because the reality is risk appetite is going down at the banks as well, as you're seeing loans that are stalling out as of Bank of Canada's data, and that is never a good sign when that begins to happen. It is a sign of tight money in the economy, and when you have tight money in the economy in a credit bubble, that is a disaster waiting to happen. And that's where I come to my original question at the start of this video about people losing their home. This is just going to continue, and it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. You see, Canada bet big on a housing bubble, and we all know how housing bubbles go. You only have to look at any other country that's had a housing bubble to see that it is a disaster when you look over a long enough period of time. And Canada's bubble has been one of the biggest bubbles in the world, and it's definitely been one that has lasted a lot longer than a lot of people thought. But here's the thing, that bubble is fracturing and cracking. You're seeing the number of power of sale listings that are growing at an exponential rate. You are seeing people that are losing their homes and are taking insane losses on housing, and you've got all the fundamentals that scare investors away, along with the banks that don't have the risk appetite anymore because they're seeing their loan losses provisions that are skyrocketing, and they've got a lot of leverage too. And when you look at banks like the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, also known as CIBC, they have a debt to equity ratio of over 480%, which is absolutely insane when you compare it to banks in the United States like the Bank of America at around 280%. So there is a huge amount of leverage that has been built up in the Canadian bubble, and this bubble has not just been a housing bubble, it's been a credit bubble, and it's been an immigration bubble. And no bubble is complete without the narratives, and we've seen those narratives that are predicated everywhere. And now, unfortunately, people have to pay the price for the malinvestment that has happened over the past decade. And whatever any politician wants to tell you about how things are going to be, they are wrong, because this bubble is bigger than the government of Canada, and nobody will be able to stop its demise. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd highly recommend that you check out this video here. And if you're looking for a VPN and also want to help support the channel, then please go to expressvpn.com/marketmania, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys.